Logging on to your super duper radio station. The program is Echoes of Grace, and tonight is part two. We're going to have such a wonderful time. My name is Elder Bismark Omeri Somuah, and Mr. Eze Pinto is the CEO of Holyhills Radio, of course, the one doubling as a mechanic and also the technician for us tonight. And Mr. Chris Aduteria is the producer of this wonderful program. Tonight we are going to have a very important discussion with a very important man. He's a very busy man. He's taking time off his service schedule to be with us here. Tonight, we are privileged to have Mr. Derrick Antwi with us, a man who is very, very big when it comes to finances. He's a huge tower. And tonight, we have had the privilege of having him take time off his service schedule to be with us. Mr. Derrick Antwi, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go right away into it. We are going to go because we're going to be talking about managing personal finance as Christians. Sometimes as Christians, we think that we can just live anyhow. We think that God is in control. We don't have to even put certain things in order. God is going to just take charge of it. But we're going to hear from you on your take on some of these issues. First of all, can you tell us about yourself?
Well, thank you for having me, Elder. My name is Derrick Antwi, and I am a member of PIWC of our own Church of Pentecost here in Columbus, Ohio. Professionally or professional life, I am an accountant by training. So right now I'm the controller at Capital University in Bexley, Ohio.
Wow.
So that's what I do for a living.
Wow. Bexley University?
No, Capital University at Bexley.
Bexley. Yes. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's in Bexley.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself growing up? How was it like?
Well, growing up, I spent a lot of my time in boarding schools, actually. I went to boarding school third term of class 1.
Really?
Yes. So I'm one of those people that spend so much of my life outside of the home. And yes, that made me very independent from a very early stage.
From class 1?
Yes, from class 1, third term.
Seriously?
Yes. You barely brush your teeth well, yes. So I went to St. John's.
Okay.
St. John's Preparatory at Achimota, near ABC. And then about class 5 or so, I took a break and became a day student. So then I was a regular student like everybody else, going from home to school at St. Anthony's in Odoko.
Okay.
And then
St. Anthony, is it Cheche Kule?
Cheche Kulis, yes. Uncle George.
Uncle George, wow.
Our beloved Uncle George. Yes, and then after that, in JSS, I went to Achimota School, JSS. And so from there, then I went on to the great Achimota School Secondary School.
When I decided college is not there, then you guys are great.
Oh, you know.
But once you are second to us.
You know, Alessandro, you guys just want to be like us. So
really?
we yes, that's okay.
Really?
You know, Achimota, that's what we do.
We're going to find out later about Adisade College and
Achimota.
But this argument, we've been having it for
oh, yes. And you know you can win because
okay, but now I'm going to allow you.
The disco boys can't. No.
Okay,
no,
that's
no,
cool.
no.
That's cool. Do you agree with me if I say that most people, or let me say most Christians are not financially disciplined?
I don't have any evidence on Christians per se, but Christians as a component of the general population, or maybe not distinctly different in terms of finances, would probably fit into the same group of people. Not too many people, or studies after studies after studies have shown that not too many people are good at managing money, or have sort of the discipline or the know-how or the understanding of how to deal with their money. And so I believe that Christians, as part of the general population, will fit into that same category.
Wow. And why is that? Why is it that most people, the average person, is not disciplined?
Money is hard, and for many people, money is uncomfortable. A lot of people don't understand it. The world is getting more and more complex, right? Especially in America, you have credit cards, you have mortgage, you have insurance, you have a whole lot of things, 401k and all the things that we throw at you. And so it becomes complex. And a lot of people, when something is too complex for us, we withdraw.
Yeah.
Right?
So
we'd rather not deal with it. Yeah. So we'll close your mind and not focus on it at all. And I think that's what a lot of us do. because things are so complicated, we'd rather not deal with it. We'd push it aside. At the end of the day, it still comes back to bite you, or you still pay the price for it.
Right.
Because financial discipline is very, very important in building your secure future for yourself as well as for those who come after you, your children, grandchildren.
And then there's instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
He just wants it now
yes.
instead of probably postponing it
Yep.
and he probably investing that money.
Right. Which is a very big thing in America, right? Instant gratification will we make it easy in America actually to do that, to have instant gratification. If you want to go to McDonald's on credit, you'll be able to get credit for McDonald's. You know, but you shouldn't have McDonald's on credit. But actually, you can get gas on credit if you want to. You know, so instant gratification is made easy here, and it's easy to fall into that trap.
And sometimes because you can, you have access to credit card, you might even buy things that you don't need.
Right.
Because you can afford it.
You can afford
technically.
it. You think you can afford it.
You
think. I think the key word is afford.
Afford.
Yes, but also think, right? Yeah. Can you truly afford it? And a lot of the times we cannot truly afford it. If you're financing something, you most likely cannot afford it. And that's why you're financing it. And so you need to be smart about how you make that decision to use credit or not, right? And maybe as we progress, we'll talk about good debt and bad debt. Because sometimes when you have to get debt or borrow money to do something, it's good, right? But sometimes it's not.
Right.
For example, if you have to borrow money, use a credit card to eat from McDonald's or from a restaurant or take a girl out, it's probably not a good thing to do.
Right. So using the credit card, technically, you are borrowing money, but because it's your credit card, you feel like that is your own money.
Right.
And then later on, interests are going to pile up, and then you find yourself.
Credit card, yes. It's a very bad form if you're going to use it for consumables. So let me talk about two kinds of debt, right?
Okay.
There's good debt and there's bad debt.
Okay.
When you use debt, when you borrow money to buy a house or to finance a house that you're buying mortgage, that's good debt, right? Because
so if you're buying a mortgage, it's good debt.
It's good debt, right? Because the house you're buying will most likely or has the possibility of appreciating in value so that it becomes something better for you in the future. So you get it today, but in the future, you may be able to sell it and make money on it, right? So you're using debt to do something good. So a lot of businesses do that, right? They borrow money so that they can buy or build. A lot of the buildings you see, actually nobody in America, no good businessman probably in America, I would say, would use their own money to build a huge, office complex like a tower, like we do in Ghana. No, they will use debt, right, and use their money as equity and be able to expand what they can use their own money for, right? So we use debt. Student loan is another example, right? Education makes yourself better. You go to school to make yourself better and your future better. And so if you borrow money to go to school, that's a good investment in yourself.
Right.
Then there's bad debt, right? Bad debt is, for example, credit card, as we're talking about. If you have to buy something, maybe the latest iPhone, because you cannot afford it today, and you're going to buy a phone for $1,000 or $1,200 today and pay very high interest rates so that you'll be able to afford it today, instant gratification as you're talking about, that's probably not a good use of your money, right? Because you end up paying a whole lot more. At the end of the day, in a year's time, Apple is going to release another iPhone S, right? And then your phone is now outdated. If you take it back to the store, they will tell you we can give you $200 for trading.
Meanwhile, you bought it at about $1,000.
Right? So that's not a good use of debt or borrowing money to do those things. I mean, I'm not condemning buying phones or those things, right? But if you want to be able to save for that, then you save for that to buy it. Then we know you can afford it. But if you're going to use credit card, it's going to cost you a lot more than using your own cash to pay for it.
Okay.
Yes.
But Mr. MP, we are talking to Christians primarily. Doesn't the Bible say we should not worry about tomorrows? If I have money, I should be able to blow the money today because God is going to take care of tomorrow.
Right. That's a very common quoted text, right? People quote that text, like Matthew 6:25. Right. That's easy for people to quote when they don't want to confront the fact that
they don't want to be disciplined.
They don't want to be disciplined. The discipline that you raised earlier on, because that discipline is hard. they just default back to the Bible says, don't worry about what you eat tomorrow, right? After all, God will take care of it. But worrying is very, very different from planning, right? Which is where when we talk about money, what we're talking about planning for your future, right? Or for something that you need to spend money on. And planning and worrying is not the same.
Okay.
Right? So there's a big distinction there. And so I want to bring, if we go back to Proverbs, right, where we learn sense or wisdom, right? Proverbs 6:6, it uses the illustration of the ant, right, to admonish us. And it talks about how the ant in the summer stores food for itself so that in the winter or at harvest time they have food.
Even the ant,
right? So the Bible uses the ant to teach us planning.
Indirectly, the Bible is insulting us.
Well, if you don't follow it, because it immediately follows that text with, if you don't do that, then you are a sluggard. The Bible calls you a sluggard, right? That's worse than lazy, right? And it says the sluggard, poverty will come on you like a thief. So the Bible is not against planning for your future or for any kind of planning. Not worrying is very different from planning. But as for planning, the Bible very, very much teaches us the wisdom of planning.
So we should plan, but we shouldn't worry.
We shouldn't worry, right? Because worrying, if you worry, you're just going to get sick, right? In America, a lot of sickness. There's anxiety, there's depression, all because of, there's a lot of, underlying a lot of these is worrying. And so, no, don't worry, but certainly plan. And when you plan,
you don't worry.
You don't worry. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. If you plan well, you will not have to worry. So don't get to worrying and then quote the Bible.
The Bible.
That's misleading. That's
so it means that sometimes we even check our responsibilities, and then we quote the Bible just to make up for our weakness.
Yeah.
So somebody will not eat right, and then when he's confronted with some sicknesses, he begins to blame God or probably go to some prayer camp somewhere. Meanwhile, he could have prevented it.
Right. It's just like how the devil used the Bible to tempt Jesus Christ. Right. You can use the Bible for the wrong reasons, or you can quote the Bible wrongly or interpret it wrongly.
Right.
And that's exactly that.
So sometimes we are our own worst enemies, whereby we are just stressing things and deceive. As a matter of fact, from listening to you, it means it's very easy for us to deceive ourselves.
It is very easy, right? Because you can, and that's the thing, that you can, people often isolate certain texts, like short parts of the Bible, right? And use it as evidence for whatever action or justification for what they want to do.
What they want to do, yeah.
But no, you have to take it in context. And also, one thing I've learned from my wife, you have to understand the Bible in spirit, not just the text of it, because that will mislead you and others too if you just rely on the text.
Okay,
so
understanding you must know the spirit.
Right.
Instead of just, they have a way of putting it, is it the message or
the word.
The word. So you need to know the spirit behind it.
That's right.
So you see the devil coming to Eve, and then quoting that, did God say you shouldn't eat everything?
Which God said, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So then it begins to just manipulate the Bible, play tricks on you, and then now you find yourself.
And sometimes that's what we do to ourselves. Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
I'm learning a lot. Yeah. For those who are watching us, this is Holyhills Radio. The program is Echoes of Grace. Earlier on, we had Stella Abadugan, and that was wonderful. And this evening, we are so blessed to have two important personalities. Stella Abadugan is an authority when it comes to music, and we also have an authority when it comes to financial planning. We'll be using him often to tell us more about planning as Christians. And let's come to something. Tithing. What is your view on tithing? Sometimes we go by cliches. And for me, I don't believe in cliches. I just want to know the truth. How do you see tithing? What do you think is... I know
it's a controversial. Yes. I tell you, I have friends that are always sending me videos of all of these Facebook preachers and Instagram preachers talking about tithing, and of course they have different perspective on what tithing is. So tithing has become one of the controversial topics of our time. People say, "Well, is it 10%? Is it more than 10%? Anything from your heart?" And all sorts of scriptures are quoted to support their views. For me, I'm not a scholar, but from what I have studied for myself and what I've learned from people that I respect on the topic of Christianity, I think tithing, I put tithing as we often preach it, as the 10%, the strict 10% under the law. Right? I think it falls more under the law, and it's one of the things that we use. We learn on. We say the law is, the obsolete, but when it comes to that one, it's hard for preachers, especially, to get away from the law.
Right.
But I believe very, very well in giving, and I think that giving is what needs to happen, because if you look at the New Testament, whenever Jesus had a chance to talk about tithing, he never explicitly quoted the 10%. And no other apostle of the Bible quoted the 10%, right? So I think tithing is one of those things like that. Jesus came and raised the standard higher. Not to do away with tithing, because when Jesus, in Matthew, Jesus and the Pharisees, he was criticizing the Pharisees as following the tithe. And he said that there's more important things to do, essentially.
That's right.
Do not neglect the tithing, but there are more important things to do. Right? So tithing, I think, is still the principle of giving is still there. But Jesus raised the standard a little bit more to giving cheerfully out of your heart.
Yeah.
As what makes you comfortable, or what you feel, what is not out of compulsion. Right? We're not forcing you to give, but give it cheerfully, right? Because God loves a cheerful giver.
That is correct.
And so I think I liken it to the standard Jesus set for adultery. Right? Prior to Jesus, adultery was when you actually committed the act of adultery.
Okay.
Then Jesus said, even in your heart, you can commit adultery. Right? It's a higher standard.
Right.
And that's how I see tithing. I think it's important that every Christian practice giving, but I, again, not a church scholar or any official position, I think that Christians should be taught more to give and the benefit of giving than specifying a strict 10%.
And I agree with you absolutely, especially the point you made about Jesus Christ lifting the bar when it even came to fornication and other aspect of it. And then there was this thing about God doesn't want to force us into doing things.
Right.
He doesn't take pleasure in us, like some people will preach and put some fear in you. Your life will be very bad if you don't give. Your life will be this. So the person is afraid.
Right.
It doesn't really, like you're saying, a cheerful giver. It doesn't really move God when you are doing something out of fear. At this New Testament, I think God wants us to come to a place of appreciation, whereby we know that we owe our very life to Him.
Right.
And if you really believe that you owe your life to Him, what is 10%?
What is 10%? Exactly.
And if we, the church, will take it upon ourselves to let people know that, according to 1 Corinthians, it says somewhere that, what do we have that we did not receive? It shouldn't be a cliche. It should be something that we really believe.
Right.
And if we believe 10%, we will not even talk about 10%.
We will not talk about 10%.
We will be talking about love of
the love of giving, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then, like you are saying, we should move away from the basic level, where I'm just going to give it to God. The primary reason is that I'm expecting God to give it
back to me, right? Right.
So it's like investment.
Yes, right. You're giving it so that you get something immediately.
Yeah.
But even in the giving, you are not happy giving.
Yeah.
Because this is a big debate. Because people feel like they are forced to do it, or that you talked about fear. Precisely so, right? They fear the consequences of not doing it, and I don't think that is what a Christian or a true Christian should feel about how to give. I think it should be totally something from your heart. And the fact that Jesus talked about it, not out of compulsion. The Bible, the New Testament talks about not out of compulsion, but out of your own heart, right? And I think that is a way better concept, something that Christians, if we had taught Christians right from the beginning, rather than this strict 10%, 10%, and you're robbing God, I think it would have made Christians better, and gotten something better out of their service or dedication to God.
Yeah, and
because they'll be giving
absolutely,
out of their heart.
Absolutely, out of their heart. And you see, the human nature is very stubborn. If I'm looking out for something from you and I begin to impose it on you, you become rebellious.
You become rebellious, right?
The moment it's like you have to do it, and I'm telling you why. If you don't do it, I'm going to punish you.
Right.
That moment you begin to form some resistance towards it. But if I begin to appeal to your lower nature, the softness in you, letting you know how you owe God, how much you should appreciate God, now the heart becomes softer.
Right.
And that is the difference between even grace and law. When you go to church and you hear the law, you become stubborn. When the preacher is telling you, and then you go to hell and burn, you see you are a bad person. You see what God up.
But you see how the Israelites were stubborn earlier.
Oh, yeah.
You see how many times God punished them in the Old Testament.
Exactly.
Yes.
And look at this woman who committed adultery. Right. Didn't the one that was brought to Jesus? Didn't this woman know about the law that the one who will be caught doing this will be stoned? And not even stoning could deter this woman from going into fornication.
Right.
It shows you the stubbornness of the human nature. That not even punishment, the scare of putting her to death. Oh. Once she wanted to do it, she went and did it.
Yes.
And she was brought before Jesus. So Jesus Christ corrected them by letting them know that it's not about the law that is presented before people. It's about the love.
Right.
So he said, go and sin no more, giving her a new heart that is full of love.
Yes.
So I mean, we should come to a point whereby we will not go by the cliche of putting fear into people. But then we just let people know that it should be something that is cheerful, something that you should love to give. Plus, you have been in the financial side of the church. Plus, if you really love the church in which you are, you want to support the church.
Right.
All these bills, who should pay?
If you understand it,
you understand it.
Then it becomes easy.
Yeah. Because you really understand.
You know what,
and you know the enormity of work that has to be done. And then you are concerned.
You're concerned.
So
right.
I think, some of these things, given the chance, we should be able to teach people more.
Right.
And then that will be very helpful.
Very helpful.
Thank you so very much.
No problem.
Now, what are some of the other investments that we can put ourselves into as Christians? Let me put it this way. What is the best form of investment? If I have money, what is the best form of investment that I can do?
So that question really depends. And a lot of things in the investment world will depend, right? We'll say it depends. There are several types of investments, and each investment has a good reason for doing it, so that what is good for you today, a good investment for you today, may not be a good investment for you tomorrow. Because investments differ. Usually when you talk about investments, you talk about risk and then you talk about return, right? So depending on how much risk there is involved, it will also impact the kind of return that is also involved. So it's always a trade-off between risk and return. Now, a question, what is the best investment? Well, if say you're going to retirement tomorrow, right, or you need money to go to Ghana and do something next month, I'm not going to counsel you to go and invest in stocks, for example, because stocks is a risky investment. By the time that you're ready to go to Ghana next month, your investment could have dropped by 50%.
Right.
Very possible, right? And then if you say needed 10,000 for a project in Ghana, you'll be in Ghana a month from now, you don't have the money that you had just a month ago, right? So it depends on when you need the money and how much risk you can afford to take.
Right.
Now, assuming that you're just saving for retirement, right, or for your children's college expenses when they grow. You have little kids, 5-year-olds, for example, who will go to college in 10, 15 years from now. Then you can afford to take more risk, because also the higher the risk, the greater the possibility of the return, right?
Okay.
And so you also have that time horizon where you can wait for markets to go up and down, right? And then invest and invest in something like stocks for your kids. So it depends, right? What I'm saying is, to simplify it, if it's something that you need the money for very soon and you cannot take on that risk, then you are better off investing in something that is low risk, like a CD, right? Certificate of deposit. If you invest in certificate of deposit, the value of your money, well, not the value, the face value of your money itself will never go down, right? So if you put in 10,000 and the bank gives you a certain interest rate, and they say come for it 1 year later. 1 year later, when you go, you are guaranteed to have the 10,000 back plus some interest. But if you are able to take on additional risk because you have the time and you invest in stock, then you can hope to get better returns many years down the road. Okay. So it all depends.
Okay. Is it okay for me to use a credit card I mean, we talked about credit card earlier on. Is it a good practice? Because almost most people that I know are using credit cards. If I can afford it, like Ghana, we don't have a credit card.
Right?
We still survive.
It's probably a blessing for a lot of people in Ghana, right?
Oh, yeah. When you use it for a while, that's when you begin to realize it's a blessing.
It's a blessing,
because
right?
People live within their means.
Right, yes. So yes, in Ghana, people tend to live within their means because there's no credit card.
You're being forced to be disciplined.
Right. You're being forced to be disciplined. And because in Ghana, oftentimes when you have to buy something, even cars, it's not too long ago that mortgage and car loans came to Ghana.
Right.
Prior to a few years ago, you had to almost always buy it cash. $10,000, $20,000, they will put it down and buy a car.
People are rich in Ghana.
People are rich in Ghana, yeah. So to your question, is it good to have a credit card? It is like everything in the world, right? There's positives and there's negatives to it, right? So it's not like credit card is absolutely bad. The credit card is very helpful in many circumstances.
Okay.
For example, many times when we come from Ghana, you come here fresh, you're not going to be able to get a car loan, for example, or nobody's going to give you a student loan by yourself. Or a mortgage because you don't have credit. So you need to build a credit.
Right.
And oftentimes the best way to start building a credit is to get a credit card. Right? The credit card usually will be your first credit in America. And then you use that to build the rest of your credit, and then in the future you can buy whatever it is, or you can get all the big kinds of loans that there are. Right? So that's a positive of a credit card. Many credit cards provide protection for things you buy. So online purchases, for example.
Right.
If you use your credit card to buy stuff online, and I would advise anybody, if you're buying something that is big dollar online or even in a store, use your credit card.
Okay.
Because the credit card will often provide you a protection so that if something happens to the product and you have a dispute with the seller,
right,
the credit card will refund your money for you.
That's what I do. That's
what you do, right?
Right.
Oh, yes. I forgot. Yes, you are a credit card expert. Yes. So credit card does offer that protection. And if you're buying tickets, for example, sometimes even when you travel, your credit card might give you the protection that if your flight is canceled, they might give you a hotel. Right? Also, some credit cards offer points. And I have one from Marriott, for example, and I know it's from Chase. I get points for using my credit card, and so I tend to spend a lot on it so that I will get that point. The points I use to spend in hotels. So for as long as I've had a credit card, and even longer than that, because you can still get a point before the credit card, I've never paid for a hotel.
Wow.
When I travel for myself, I don't pay for it because I use the points, right? I have used the credit card to my advantage to gather points that the company will use to give me a hotel for free.
Wow.
So there are positives to it, right? But there are also negatives to it. And when it comes to credit card, the biggest one is just the interest rate. Right? Interest rates, most credit cards have interest rates about 18, 19, 20%. 25% is not uncommon. A lot of people, if you look at your credit card, it's probably 24.99%. That is extremely expensive. Right. That is extremely expensive.
So most of the payment are even going into the interest.
Towards interest, right?
Right.
And it's even worse when you decide to do the minimum payment.
Right.
Because that one there, then you are better off not getting what you got, And I just took an example for you. So, for example, if you have about $10,000 on a credit card, that's about 23% interest rate, which is very common. And you only pay the minimum, right? So for most credit cards, the example I'm looking at right now, with about $10,000, your minimum payment might be just about $140 to $150 a month. Okay. If you did that, you know how long it would take you to pay off that debt of $10,000? 23 years. 23 years.
Wow.
If you decide to pay your credit card by the minimum amount that is due, it will take you 23 years. And by the time you're done, you'd have paid $20,000 in interest alone. Interest alone.
Serious?
Interest alone. So it becomes very expensive. And then fees on top of it. If you're late, the credit card might charge you like $39 plus the fee that the interest that you didn't pay already, and they will charge you interest on the fee that they are charging you too. So very quickly it begins to compound and become a lot, and so by the time that you get out of it, you are in serious debt. And so credit card can be a source of bondage. The Bible talks about the debtor always being the slave, yes, enslaving the which one's the debtor? The debtor being a slave to the creditor. Right. So it is very important that if you're using credit card, you use it wisely. It's not that don't use a credit card or don't get a credit card. That's not the point, and it's probably not good advice. But know how to use it and use it well.
And then there was this thing of if you did a balance transfer on it, and then you also use it for, let's say, cash advance. When you're making payment, it's going to the lower interest.
Oh, yes.
And the higher interest is building.
Oh, yeah.
That is what even tells people. So let's say I have 4,000 in balance transfer, which is lower. And I have, let's say, 3,000 in cash advance, which is higher. Let's say 29.9. And this one over here is about 4%. When you are making payment, instead of them to apply it to the higher one, so you pay that one off faster.
No, they won't do it. They are not stupid. They want money, right?
Wow.
They are in the business to make money off you, and so they will not use the quote the Bible. They say, Bible say, be kind to your friends. No, there's no mercy here. They will make as much money as they can off you as possible.
Wow.
Yes, they will not forgive you.
Wow.
And the thing with cash advance, for example, is you, on top of that, not just the interest rate, which is often higher than your regular interest rate.
Right.
But when you actually do the cash advance, they charge you a flat fee or a percentage of the amount that you are transferring, right?
About 5%.
So maybe, about 5%. And so if you add on the 5% to the interest rate they are charging you, then the interest rate is even higher than you actually see.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it tends to be very expensive.
Bishop, Honorable Carrington says, that is deep. That is my son.
Thank you, Honorable. That's my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you advise me to take a loan here? Let's say even at 3% to go and build a house in Ghana. If I'm going to live in Ghana, let's say in the next 5 years.
To take a loan from the U.S.?
U.S. and go and build a house in Ghana.
It depends on the cost of borrowing. So you always, every time you're borrowing money or every time you're getting into debt, you have to consider the cost of the borrowing. If it's a loan in the United States, oftentimes they will tell you two things to give you a sense of how much it costs. They will tell you the interest rate or the APR, the annual percentage rate. So the APR will usually factor into not just the interest rate, but other charges or fees on top of the interest rate to let you figure out what the cost of borrowing is. If you're borrowing for a house in the United States, the cost of borrowing tends to be pretty good. In today's environment, it's easy to get 4% or even less than 4% for interest rate. And if you get that amount to build a house in Ghana, then it's probably a good thing that you're doing. Right? We can talk about why do you even need to buy houses in Ghana, but why not here, right? Yeah, I'm going to be exactly a funeral home, but people have different objectives, so I cannot criticize people so much for that. But if it's a good interest rate and it won't cost you that much, then it's probably good. However, when people are giving you loan or when companies, credit cards, and banks are giving you money, they look at what you have to secure the loan, and it will be hard for them to give you just money or unsecured or personal loan. Oftentimes they'll call it a personal loan to just go that you can take that money to Ghana and build a house. If they do that, it's probably likely going to be a very expensive loan. And so you have to be wary of how much it's going to cost you, how much you can pay, and when you plan to pay it back to make that decision.
Okay. And on the lighter side, could it be, I was thinking the other day about how Ghanaians spend so much on funerals and social events and all weddings and all those things. Could that also be part of the reason why majority of people that I know, if they are very honest, will tell you that it's not easy? Their finances. Are not good. Could that be part of the reasons why?
It is part of the reason. There are many other reasons why people have financial insecurity, or when it comes to money, they are very tight. Certainly, weddings and funerals is one of them. I think we have established in the whole world that when it comes to funerals, Ghanaians are we have won it. So we just love funeral for whatever reason, and it does cost a lot of money. Elaborate, right?
And did you see the one on Facebook where they were dancing?
Oh, you see the excesses. So the excesses, we've taken it to such extremes that now look at what we're doing. You know, a funeral is supposed to. I believe that a funeral is supposed to be something that we use to honor the dead, right? To bid them farewell. So it's nice to do something nice for them as a farewell. For the good life that they lived, right? Or for the good things that they did for you. But there's always a threshold of what is decent and respectable and what is just pure extravagance. And I think when it comes to weddings and funerals, Ghanaians are way into that extravagance side of things. A lot of people I know, when it comes to funeral, they borrow money.
Yeah.
And and that's the first indicator oftentimes of the kind of decision that you're making, whether it's good or bad. If you have to borrow, and we talked about good debt and bad debt earlier on, if you have to borrow for a funeral, you're not going to get anything out of it. I mean, the person may be rich. If they are rich and you get your money back, then maybe it's an investment.
Right.
But that's also not the purpose of a funeral, and so that's probably not a good idea. But if you have to borrow to do certain things, then it's not a good thing. You're probably not making a good investment. Weddings is prime example, and I can speak more to wedding because I've gone through that one, right? And you can see how from your time, the time that you had a wedding to today's weddings, see the difference.
The difference, yeah.
You know, back in the day, people could have a wedding in the Pentecost basement, rent free.
Some people even went to pastor's house and
just bless them. You know. But today, no, it has to be a hotel, and not just any hotel. It has to be a grand ballroom with all the chandelier. If there's no chandelier, then people wouldn't even go there. And for me, I don't have trouble when people have the money to spend, right? Dangote's daughter had a big funeral. But his dad is Dangote.
Big wedding.
Yes, big wedding, but with Bill Gates around. But that is Dangote. They can pay for it. But for many people who have weddings here, it costs them about 25,000, 30,000 in Ohio area.
Wow.
To do a wedding. And I know that a lot of young people don't have that much money.
But just to impress.
And
give some impression that they are rich.
And exactly. That's part of it. A lot of it is also pressure from family.
Yeah.
You know, or from our churches. We have set certain standard that if you don't meet, unfortunately, in our own churches, you would hear people say things like, you know, or they will say something that would demoralize you truly. And so a lot of people tend to follow the crowd and spend so much on weddings when they really cannot afford it. And the painful thing for young married couples is often you need money. You need a lot of money. You know, you begin in life, very soon God will bless you with a child. Children are expensive, or you might have a family situation. And after the wedding, it can be very tight. It can be very tight for a lot of people.
Wow. Last question. So, what is your take on special offering?
Special offering at church on top of the tithe.
On top of the tithe.
And that is said to me for.
No, I mean, the young people who are coming should be. I mean, the young ones should be able to speak our minds on some of these issues.
Right.
Because I know there are people who don't sometimes want to express their views, but we should be able to, say what we feel.
And a lot of the young people do talk about those things. You know, I know because I'm friends with the young people, right? You know, we are a group, and we talk about it. And a lot of people do express reservations about the frequency and the demand for special offerings all the time. So we know, a lot of people, at least my circle of people, we know that giving is important. We know that the church needs money. But I think it's tempering, you know, I want to even go on a verge of saying being empathetic to people. Because if we cannot ask for money every single day from the people or from members, it gets to a point that people get tired of it, donor fatigue. You know, I think the church is not donation, but you get donor fatigue. Or you feel that people are watching you, or there's expectation for you to give all the time, and so that creates some kind of resentment to the whole idea of giving and giving cheerfully and giving out of your heart or out of the fruit of your labor.
Right. And there was this thing of just like mosquitoes in Ghana. you can use a particular spray. It gets to a point that they get used to it. When you spray it, they don't die.
They don't die, right?
So the same things that they use to collect money, the same cliche, the same words.
Right.
Sometimes God is going to lift you up. You're going to house. People have heard it, and sometimes they are not seeing anything.
They are not seeing it.
So you come and stand there and you are saying the same thing. It doesn't really move you.
It doesn't move you.
And that's why sometimes taking special offering at church is difficult.
Right.
Because I feel like we should move away from this enticing ways of trying to persuade them with some sweet words and just tell them the bare facts about it. I mean, let people just give.
Right.
And then if you are able to encourage people to give, like we are talking about tithes, not necessarily tithes, if you are able to let people understand the fact that it's all about how much God has done for them, people will give enough, and there will not be the need for special
offering all the time.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
I mean,
And I think special offering. I mean, the church does need money, as with every organization, right? So it's up to also the church to do what is within the ability of its members.
Right.
And if we do that, then we don't overburden the members.
Exactly. You have a final word for our listeners?
Final words. Well, money is important, right? And I think we started with discipline, and so I'll say something a little about discipline.
Right.
I think a lot of the time the excuse that we make is not having enough money or enough savings, or the paycheck. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck because it's tight in America. You know, our bills are difficult. But the thing is that it doesn't matter how much you make in a paycheck, it will not be sufficient for you if you lack the discipline to learn how to save and learn how to spend within your means.
Right.
You will always have issues. It doesn't matter whether you make just $20,000 today. I'll tell you, once you make $100,000 or you make $200,000 a year, your expenses will increase accordingly. In fact, it will more than increase because now you make so much money, you think your taste is higher. You want a Tesla. You don't want a 2004 Toyota Corolla anymore. You want a brand new Tesla. Then you want to live in Dublin or New Albany and live in a big house because the people around you, or the people who, if you're making 200, you're a doctor or something, your doctor friends, that's where they live. So you want to live there. So now your mortgage is also higher. So until you have learned that discipline to save money and to invest money, you will always live paycheck to paycheck, regardless of how much you make. So
you should
that
be able to
discipline is
refuse to
very
live
important.
in Dublin, even though you are making 200,000.
Right.
If you are able to cut down on those little things.
Oh yes, and that's the thing, and that's the thing we need to learn, right? When you're making decisions to buy something, you have to reassess yourself. Do you really need to make those kind of purchases? And especially when you go to the store, sometimes you go to the store to buy one thing and you leave with a basket full of things.
Right.
And you need to learn that discipline. That discipline, I think you mentioned exactly. That's the hardest part, because if you don't, in America, advertisement is everywhere. Advertisement, that's what holds Google, Facebook, that's what makes them big, right? It's just because of advertisement. It's a big business, and they know how to trick the human brain to buy more than they are willing to buy. Right? And you cannot fault them. That's what they do. They need to sell stuff. But you also need to learn your discipline or be disciplined so that when you go to the store, you buy what you need. Even when they're offering you a credit card so that you pay $10 a month, you know that, well, I cannot do this today, and I need to save money to buy it if I want it. And that discipline will secure your future and your children's future, whether or not you make $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year.
So that means it doesn't really matter. You can make $200,000.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When I used to work at the bank, I knew people who would come there and be making $300 a month. Their account will be negative when the next Friday comes and their paychecks they bring their paychecks. But I also knew people who were making more than $3,000, and when they show up on a Friday, their account will also be equally negative.
Wow.
So if you're making $300 a week and your account is negative and you're making $2,500 and you show up and your account is still negative, what makes you think that there's any difference? No, there isn't. It's about your discipline. It's not about how much money you make. No.
So it's all about
discipline. It's all about discipline.
Right. We need to talk more about discipline the next time you come here.
Okay.
Wow, Mr. Derrick Antwi, we are so grateful for taking time off your heavy schedule to be with us here on Echoes of Grace on Holyhills Radio, the super duper radio station. My name is Bismark. Somuah. Until next week, mucho gracias, amigos. See you later. Bye.